join you on this rainy day for a lunch and learn. I'm here to talk about the 5 rules for digital engagement, lessons that we can learn from the world's most viral content. So this is some content that I had developed, that I had gone over with Brooke before the holidays, and she thought that it would be interesting for you guys and potentially really useful in the work that you guys are doing. So I certainly hope that turns out to be true, and I'm looking forward to sort of any feedback. Did you start the recording? Okay. Cool. So I'm going to start off and just tell you a little bit about my background so you can sort of understand how I wound up here today in front of you guys. I started off in life as an academic. So I have my PhD in communication from the University of Southern California. I'm a local girl. And I actually received my doctorate when I was just 22 years old. So I was actually one of the youngest PhDs ever awarded out of the Annenberg School. And what that means is that I've been a trained social scientist literally my entire adult life. So that's why you're going to see a lot of like references to research and sort of like compulsive footnoting in the presentation. I come by it honestly. I then spent the next decade of my career as a corporate consultant. And so one of the things I did during that decade was I led AIG's brain-based high-performance coaching program. And so this is when I started to really deepen my interest in sort of the neuroscience that underlies human behavior. Now at the time, it was all about employee behavior change, right? And turns out that what you're trying to do in terms of persuading people to change their habits and take the action that you want them to take, it works when you're talking about consumers as well, whether you're talking about employees or consumers. A lot of the basic psychology is really the same. And then after that decade of my life, I decided to join the family business and became a co-owner of Limelight Web Development and a startup founder, which is sort of how Brooke and I wound up meeting was through startups in the tech world here in Los Angeles, which is really growing. And so our mission at Shopping Quizzes is to synthesize the latest research into both content and tools that can really help marketers achieve their goals. So let's go ahead and jump into the material. Can you try and guess what is the most viral form of online content? What is the thing that gets shared the most on Facebook? And what New York Times content beat all their other stories in just 11 days?
Video.
That's a good guess. Video. Does anybody have another guess?
Cat gifts.
Cat gifts. That's a good one.
I think a list of some sort.
Listicle. Those are all really good guesses. The answer is quizzes, right? Quizzes were the most shared type of content on Facebook, right? And they have a very high completion rate, right? When you start a quiz, generally speaking, if it's a true quiz, not necessarily like a lengthy survey, but like an online Facebook quiz, you're generally going to finish it.
Was the New York Times one the one where you, based on kind of...
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
The diamond quiz.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and it was posted on something like, December 20th. And it blew away every other piece of Pulitzer Prize-winning journalism that they had posted that entire year, right? Kissmetrics reports, I think this actually might be secondary quote to BuzzSumo. We analyzed the top 1 million most shared articles, and the most shared form of content by far was quizzes, right? And so here's what we know, right, is that people love quizzes, right? They love quizzes because it tells them something about themselves. And we all know that quizzes can provide, at best, a delightful experience. At minimum, they're sort of fun and engaging, right? People like interactive content that they can share with their friends.
Sorry, what was the quiz that blew away?
The New York Times dialect quiz. It was like, use y'all and you guys.
Yeah. And you could try to cheat it, but it does not work. It has your radius of where you grew up by like 20 miles or something like that.
It's like a scene out of My Fair Lady.
Yeah.
So what do you have to answer?
It's like, what do you call...
like if I had a can of Sprite, it's like, is it pop or is it soda or do you just call it Coke?
Like,
I
what
love
would the
that.
101 be? A perkway, expressway, a highway?
Totally. An interstate, yeah.
Even saying the 101 is technically controversial. Yeah. Yep.
Totally. And so when you know this really interesting fact about quizzes and how dominant they are in their unique ability to hook our attention in a noisy marketplace, it makes me want to look deeper, right? And so I was asking the question, not only like, okay, so quizzes are really super engaging, but why? What is the underlying principles? What are the underlying principles that are at work here, right? What is the consumer psychology? What is the basic human cognition? What is the neuroscience underneath this? And this is what I came up with, are these 5 principles, and we're obviously gonna be spending our time and the rest of your lunch together going through each one in a little bit more detail to make it as useful as possible. But one thing to keep in mind is that these 5 principles of narcissism, visual dominance, mystery, tribe, and social capital, they work for engagement in general, right? They're really highlighted in digital engagement, but they can work for employee engagement, they can work for engaging millennials specifically, right? These are universal principles that you can use with or without quizzes when you understand sort of like the core breakdown there. So the first one we're going to talk about is the rule of narcissism. So the word narcissism actually comes from a Greek myth. So there was a mythical figure, son of a river god, who fell in love with his own reflection in a pond of water. And that was Narcissus, and that's where we get the word narcissism from. And I think that's an important sort of story to tell, because that's actually the image you want to keep in mind, is someone gazing at their own reflection with total love, right? So the formula of tell me about me is one that has not only works today, like people talk about kids today, millennials today, oh, they're so self-involved, right? No, this is something that is really ancient and primal and enduring about the human condition, is that we are incredibly interested in things that are self-relevant. So there's also a clinical personality disorder known as narcissism, but that's not what we're talking about, right? You're not talking about something that is negative and, you know, abusive or anything. What we're talking about is actually the academic construct of self-relevancy. So, you know, if you feel like reading some dusty journal articles, that's what you put into Google Scholar, is self-relevancy, and that's where all this information will start to pop up. And what's really interesting is just that it turns out we're really hardwired, right, to pay attention to anything when we get a signal that it's going to pertain to us, right? We've put together a framework of brain functions that centers on self-relevance as a core feature in how we appraise stimulus and possible interactions. I'm just going to X out of.
I have this presentation for anybody that wants to know the facts. For the furious note takers.
Right. So, so think about what are the ways that you can really use narcissism to engage your audience, right? And here's an example of how we do it with quizzes, right? Very common for an apparel line. This is actually a luxury accessories line. It's a customer of ours. Very common for this type of retailer to want to insert into your Facebook feed, hey, we have new items on sale, or we have, you know, a new collection coming in, new colors for the season, what have you, right? But if you can frame it in terms of the customer, in terms of the user, the audience member, right? How are you going to treat yourself for fall, right? That actually triggers, like, literally a different pathway, right? In appraising that as, is that stimulus that you want to interact with? And this is what it looks like on desktop, right? So not just that, hey, we sell beautiful boho dresses for Coachella girls, but rather, what's your perfect one, right? Are you into short dresses or long dresses? And this is what it looks like in your Facebook feed. This is the difference, right? So this is a very traditional type of sponsored post that you're gonna see, you know, and this is a real sponsored post from the Free People Facebook feed. And when you share an image like that, you know, you're gonna resonate with a certain percentage of the people who see that post. Whether they are responding to the model, the color, the style, the clean background, whatever it is, that's gonna resonate with a certain percentage of people. What we believe is that you're gonna resonate with a higher percentage of people by posing this question, right? What is your preference? Grabs the attention in a different way. And this sort of leads us right into the second rule of digital engagement, which is visual dominance. So you might think about all of the text that you guys are including in the work that you guys do, all the text that you're exposed to as a consumer, and you maybe have a guess as to what percent of that text actually gets consumed. Does anybody have a guess?
25%.
That is super close, about 20%. Users only read about 20% of the text that they're exposed to. because reading is incredibly inefficient for the brain, right? But if you add a picture, you get 6 times more retention. And so once again, if you're looking for the original citations, what this is called in the academic literature is the picture superiority effect. And it has to do with sort of the evolution of the human brain, right? So you have like your reptile brain, which is like the core brain, and that controls like breathing, you know, the fact that you don't have to think to breathe. And then you have sort of the midbrain, and that's where a lot of our visual processing occurs, right? So that's why we can, you know, a toddler doesn't have to be taught how to navigate a room, right? Because they visually can process space and dimension. Language is the newest part of the brain, right? And so it's not as deeply tied and it's not as emotional as pictures can be. So the picture superiority effect really shines, right, in this particular context, which is when people are casually exposed to information for a limited time, which exactly describes the situation when you're trying to market or advertise, right? Is that these are not people that are reading the ads with great intent, right, in a magazine or on a website, right? They're just sort of glancing impressions, right? So how do you break through? So what you want to do is obviously, I mean, you guys already know how important images are. And this is one of the underlying explanations around quizzes, because quizzes tend to be visual, right? So once again, this is sort of a before and after comparison. If you look on the left, you're going to see our client, Fair and Flawless, before they added a quiz to this page, right? So they sell face creams for hyperpigmentation, so lightening, whitening creams. And as you can see, this left side is a very typical category page, right? Think about how much text you would have to read and process. You have to focus, read it, process it, right? Just to figure out which of these products is for the face versus which of these is intended for use on your body, right? Versus asking it like this, right? I mean, yes, the words are there, but like when you look at this side of the screen, you don't even have to read anything, any of the text on here, right? You can just sort of see clearly that there are these 2 choices, right? A face product or a body product. So it saves a lot of reading. Same thing here, right? Tons, tons of textual processing required on this category page to buy a golf shoe versus answering a single visual question with or without spikes. And if you've ever tried to shop for custom photo glyphs on Shutterfly, you know they have a really overwhelming selection, right? Reading, like trying to, when you read the descriptions of the categories, you know, it's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? But then you get to something that's really visual and it processes instantly. The third rule of digital engagement is the rule of mystery, right? So mystery is all about the ability for your marketing appeals to create curiosity or suspense, to do something that's really unexpected, right? And so anytime that you can get the customer to wonder, right, what's going to happen, what result am I going to get, or even ask themselves the question of why, you're invoking mystery, right? Mystery is what makes slot machines so addictive, right? So in the literature, this is referred to as variable reward. And it is actually addicting, right? It can be actually addicting, right? Like my mom goes to the casino and pays the penny slots twice a week without fail, right? I've seen it in action, right? So variability increases activities in the part of the brain that generates dopamine, right? So this is like whatever you're doing to generate the reward, fundamentally in the brain, it's dopamine. And variable reward, the sense of mystery, the not knowing what's going to sort of be the next thing that you see or the next click that you're going to get really boosts the dopamine. So you can use this by simply asking yourself, can you make your campaigns act like slot machines, right? And less like ATMs. So can you name the top 3 ways that you can create mystery? So number 1 is ask a question, right? That immediately will trigger the user to wonder what the answer is going to be. Offering a variable reward, right? So this is really interesting, right? Because you can actually give away less margin in this type of setup, right? because you could just give everybody 15% off, or you could have them spin a wheel or, you know, some other sort of method, right, to generate anywhere from 5% to 20% off. But in the end, you actually give away less margin, right? And you potentially get higher levels of engagement because people will just want to see what will happen. You can also just do something unexpected, right? Also generates mystery, right? This is a really famous ad campaign. I'm sure you guys have seen it before. Don't buy this jacket, right? It makes people sort of like, you know, hear that record scratch sound, and then they want to focus in and try and understand why on earth would Patagonia be telling me not to buy their products, right? That creates mystery. And of course, as a bonus, you can use a quiz, right? Which Italian artisan should be your personal jeweler? Now this is obviously a very specialized retailer that we do work for, that they're appealing to women who have personal jewelers, the high-end customer. The next rule is the rule of tribe. Okay, so the digital engagement power of tribe comes from the fact that it is so primal that it is actually hooked into like the survival pathways of the brain, right? So if you think about sort of like our caveman forebears, being accepted and a member of your group or tribe or extended family literally equaled survival, and being ostracized or outcast or losing your tribal identity, losing your membership in the tribe, literally meant you were going to die, right? Because we don't have very sharp teeth or very good claws, right? So the group membership is wired very deeply along a single pathway, right? And the way that you can tell that this is true is that you can actually take physical painkillers to numb emotional pain. So if you are actually suffering from some form of emotional pain, like a breakup, you can actually take Tylenol and make it better, right? And the reason is because they are so heavily co-wired, right? So when you think about the significance of this relationship, right, it's definitely not surprising that group membership provides identity and that identity drives brand preference, right? So we know that this is something where you can use it to move the needle on specific consumer and purchasing decisions that your audience is going to make. So the question is, can you offer your customers a tribe, right? Can you generate in your efforts effectively a sorting hat effect, right? Where you take people and you offer them a little hit of that sort of survival-related identity. So this is an example of one of my favorite sorting hats, right, that's out there right now. So this is the New York Times bestselling author Gretchen Rubin, and she's written, you know, several, you know, bestsellers, but this one concept that she introduced really took hold like nothing else. Like she had, you know, 3-4 books out, and this one concept of which of these 4 are you is the one that really caught fire, right? So I won't go into detail here, but she groups people into these personality tendencies. Are you an upholder, an obliger, a questioner, and a rebel, right? And it's irresistible, right? Once people sort of learn the format, they want to know what they are. And you can use this type of sorting to really target your pitch, right? So like, let's say you are, you know, you're marketing to a CIO persona, right? You can start off by posing the question, well, what type of CIO are you, right? Are you a innovation CIO? Are you an operational CIO? Are you a business strategy CIO, right? What type are you? And then, depending on how you help them self-identify, because of course they're fascinated to know what they are, then you can pitch them along those lines, right? Well, because you're operationally focused, you're gonna love this product because of what it does for, you know, the infrastructure, for what it does for, you know, your hardware or whatever it is, right? You can appeal to them in much more specific and targeted ways. And the interesting thing is that then they want to share their identity, right? So that's where you can start to see that virality starting to come to the front. Because then once I've told you, hey, you're an upholder, right? You're gonna wanna potentially share that, like, hey everyone, I'm an upholder, right? If I tell you, hey, you are a innovation-focused CIO, you might wanna share that, I'm an innovation CIO. And studies have shown that people will actually forego monetary rewards because self-disclosing information about themselves is so intrinsically rewarding. They're like, I would actually rather you, Mr. Researcher, keep your $5. I would rather be able to post this to Facebook and tell all my friends that I'm this, right? So not only will people forego money, they'll even pay money to declare what tribe they belong to.
Jeez.
Personally, I'm a dog iPhone Trekkie. And I have put folding money into tip jars that allow me to express that. So the fifth rule is the rule of social capital. Okay. So social capital is just sort of like a fancy way of saying the bank account of your relationships, right? So social capital is about the resources, the investments, and how those sort of relational investments have their own value, right? The ability to be converted to favors. So we share things that build our social capital and are incredibly reluctant to share things that might decrease our social capital, right? So just think for yourself, like really, like your personal, group of friends, like your personal social circles or your online circle. How much would I have to pay you to share something that was actually made you look bad, that was actually unflattering about you? What kind of number, what kind of check would I have to write to you for you to do that, okay? And that's influencer marketing, right? So this is where, I think this gives you insight into why certain influencer campaigns can be very, very successful, and then other influencer campaigns are either not successful or not sustainable, right? And so when you are helping any member of your audience, any fan, whether it's a civilian off the street, or whether it's somebody with a lot of followers, or whether it's a member of the press, whatever it is, but when you're asking them to do something that's going to build their own social capital, right? You're giving them something that's going to make them look good in that reflected light. That's going to be sustainable. It's going to be affordable, right? It's going to be effective. And then if you're asking people to spend their social capital, then you need to be prepared for a lot of friction, right? And for a lot of expense. So, how does this post make me look, right? In my social circle, I would potentially not share to my personal Facebook wall that there's a discount on hefty bags, right? This, I would share. This I probably did share. I think I actually shared this one, right? Is that I did well on this history quiz. And then as a bonus, the rule that amplifies the first 5 rules of digital engagement is the rule of instant gratification. Because the only thing better than getting what you want is getting what you want right now, this very second. And it's really crazy because what we're finding is that the perceptible level of advantage is down to, in like load times and like internet speeds, is a quarter of a second, 250 milliseconds, right, is what's been published by the New York Times, what's being reported by Google, right? And so really important to think about, not only the technical speed of how long it's taking something to load, but how quickly are you offering the gratification that you're offering? Like whatever it is that you're offering, can you speed it up? What can you offer that feels closer to that instantaneous, which is now defined as a quarter of a second? That's the literal definition of instantaneous these days, right? And so there's a reason why this is so universal, right? Like, yes, it has sped up. They say that globally, walking speed has increased by 10%. It's just everybody walks faster now. So there is acceleration in general, but it also has to do with certain other factors, right? So like evolutionarily, we were imbued with a sense of impatience, right? Because otherwise, if we evolved to be really, really patient, some of us would have starved to death, right? So the ones of us that made it to 2017 were the more impatient ones, because we didn't starve to death being really, really patient waiting for a fish in the river that didn't have any, right? And then the other thing is the memory stress, right? So our short-term memory, our working memory, our sense memory, these are all very limited buffers that we're working with, right? We can store immense amounts of information, but not in working memory, right? So if you are asking someone to wait for an email to come or wait for something to arrive in the mail, they're going to forget by the time it gets there why they even wanted it in the first place, or at least the risk is higher, right? And so when you put all of these factors together, right, the 5 rules of digital engagement, the bonus factor of instant gratification, what you get is potentially results like these, right? Where quizzes can increase email opens, likes and shares, lead generation, and conversion, right? E-commerce conversion to purchase by 20 to 25%, or potentially even more, right? So now it's time for you guys to have a quiz, right? So how many of these are you using in your marketing, right? Sorry about the hiccup there on the graphics, but if you think about a specific campaign that you're working on, or a specific initiative that you're working on, how many boxes are you checking, right? Narcissism, visual dominance, mystery tribe, social gratification, and the bonus is instant gratification, social capital. So if you score 2 to 3, right, you're actually off to an excellent start, right? If you scored 3 to 4, then you now know sort of definitively that you're using the majority of possible principles, right? And if you're using 5 or even the bonus point, which would give you 6, then I might have a job for you. So why doesn't everybody use quizzes, right? I mean, fundamentally, marketers are just really busy, right? Quizzes are hard to write, they can be expensive to custom code, and they're slow to install, right? But what we do is we offer quizzes that are created for you, based in these best practices, and there's no developer required, right? So do-it-yourself quizzes, you need to pick a tool, buy it, learn how to use it, or find developers to custom code it for you, figure out the questions, the logic, the graphics, what you're going to show for results, and then you have to get into the development queue, potentially on the client side, to have it installed onto their domain, right? With shopping quizzes, we're kind of right in the middle of an awkward rebranding to super quizzes, so from shopping quizzes to super quizzes. But with our service, you order a branded quiz with a call, just like ordering a pizza. And we figure it all out, and you get a campaign-ready landing page that has the quiz on it in as little as 1 to 2 weeks. So this is where you can go to learn more, and that's my contact information. I want to thank you guys for your attention today.
Cool.
And just remind me, your development integration can work with existing URL. Like
Yes.
the client's URL, it's not a unique, it can be unique as well. But.
That's right, yeah. So, so our quizzes, which you saw a lot of examples of, they are delivered as JavaScript. That can be, so they're delivered in 2 ways, right? We can deliver them as JavaScript, which can get installed onto the client site, and then you can display the quiz just using a simple div container. So it's a pretty straightforward widget, and it'll pass UTM parameters for attribution into the site's Google Analytics automatically. The other way that we deliver the quizzes, which we came up with to be as friendly as possible to marketers on the agency side, is as ready-to-go landing pages. So we can alias, like let's say your client was Patagonia, right? They can alias a subdomain like quizzes.patagonia.com. They point that at our Unbounce account basically, and then you can have your quizzes basically ready to go, and you can start directing traffic to it. And we just scrape the client branding and do a streamlined landing page that allows for instant availability of the quiz without any dev work having to happen on the client side.
Will that still work if it was a piece of social content that lived inside of Facebook?
Well, yeah, so what we do is we install open graph tags onto those pages so that when quizzes.patagonia.com, which jacket should I really be wearing, gets shared to Facebook, it automatically populates the title, the description, and the image, right? And then when they click on it, they go to that landing
So it
page.
does redirect.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys concept quizzes and the intent behind them? Like we said, we wanted a quiz for, you know, to get consumers engaged about a new product line. Would you guys concept what type of quizzes they
Yeah.
are and what all that?
Yeah, exactly. You know, we come up with possible quiz topics and you know, brainstorm what the questions would look like. We're a mobile-first design, and so you saw several of our examples where it's left-right answer graphics, and so it's a very fast and you know, really good sort of user experience of like this or that, as opposed to like scrolling through, you know, like 7 or 8 different options, which adds actually a lot of cognitive load and friction to, and decreases your completion rate.